Have you ever stopped to think, really think, about what holds up a democracy? What gives it its strength? Well, for a lot of people, it boils down to one thing: free and fair elections. Simple, right? But what happens when that very idea gets seriously questioned? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to take a really close look at something that's causing quite a stir in India right now. We're talking about serious questions, allegations really, challenging the integrity of their electoral system, and the focus. It's squarely on the Election Commission of India, the ECI.
That's right. And our deep dive today, it's grounded in a pretty detailed analysis. It's called Auditing India's Electoral System: Urgent Reforms Needed. This piece really, methodically goes through recent controversies, but also looks at the wider systemic problems, gives us a solid base to work from.
Exactly. And our job here, our mission for this deep dive, is to kind of guide you through all of this. We want to unpack these big claims. We'll try to sort out what seems to have evidence behind it from, well, what doesn't, at least not yet. We'll explore the challenges within the system itself that this analysis brings up and the reforms being talked about. Basically, we want to help you get up to speed quickly and properly. So let's get into it. Where did this all start?
Well, the immediate trigger, the spark, if you like, comes from some really, really serious words from Rahul Gandhi. He's the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha, India's lower house. And he didn't mince words. He accused the Election Commission of India of, quote, criminal fraud.
Wow. Criminal fraud. That's a heavy charge.
It absolutely is.
And he wasn't just speaking generally, was he? He got specific.
Very specific. He pointed right at the Mahadevapura Assembly segment. That's part of the Bangalore Central Parliamentary constituency. The claim was that over 1 lakh, that's 100,000 fake votes were allegedly created there.
100,000.
100,000. And the allegation is that this was done specifically to make sure the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, won that seat in the 2024 general election.
100,000 votes. I mean, that's a huge number. Just to put it in perspective for you listening, that's like the population of a decent-sized town. It definitely makes you pause.
It does. And his team laid out apparently 5 kinds of malpractice they claim to have found.
Like what? What sort of things?
Well, things like voters supposedly registered multiple times in the same area.
Okay.
Or finding, probably large numbers of voters all listed under a single house address.
Right, that sounds suspicious on its face.
It does, and here's something the analysis really flags. Gandhi's team said they found booth slips indicating the same person voted multiple times in just one polling booth.
Wait, the same person voting multiple times?
That's the claim. Now, if that's verified, it completely blows up the whole one person, one vote principle. That's fundamental.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What else was mentioned?
There was also a point about identical voter ID card numbers, EPIC numbers showing up in different states. But it's important to note, the analysis points out the ECI had actually looked into those kinds of anomalies earlier this year. So that specific issue might not be, a major current problem.
Okay, so that bit might be less relevant now? But the other claims still stand.
Definitely. And the argument wasn't just that this was a localized issue in Mahadevapura.
No.
Gandhi claimed it was part of a, quote, calculated modus operandi, a deliberate strategy, basically.
To help the BJP where?
In marginal constituencies, places where the vote was expected to be close, right across the country. And the analysis notes that similar concerns, maybe less detailed, had been raised by the Congress Party during the Maharashtra Assembly election too, about big jumps in voter registrations.
Okay, so we have these very serious allegations, specific examples, but then there's the question of proof. What does the analysis say about how much of this is actually proven?
Right, and this is where it gets nuanced. The article we're looking at, it stresses that while the allegations are serious and the findings are concerning, Gandhi's analysis stops short of proving that these discrepancies directly enabled the BJP's victory.
Okay, so let's dig into that Mahadevapura example again. The numbers seem dramatic.
They do. So the BJP won that assembly seat in 2023 by around 44,500 votes. Okay.
Got it.
Then in the 2024 general election, for the Lok Sabha seat encompassing it, the BJP's margin there balloons to over 114,000 votes.
That's a huge jump. So why isn't that proof, according to the analysis? What's the missing link?
Well, the analysis points out a couple of things. First, the total number of new electors added to the roll between those elections was about 52,600. And crucially, the actual increase in the number of people who turned out to vote was only around 20,000.
Okay. So the increase in the margin was much bigger than the increase in actual voters, or even new registered voters.
Exactly. So the analysis argues, establishing a causal link between electoral roll errors and poll outcomes requires more than circumstantial correlation.
Right. So finding errors or discrepancies is one thing.
But proving they caused a specific outcome and that it was, as alleged, deliberate fraud orchestrated by the ECI in collusion with the BJP. Well, the analysis says that link just isn't substantiated by the evidence presented so far.
And this distinction, for you listening, separating an allegation, however serious, from a proven fact, it's so important. It's really the basis for any informed discussion, isn't it?
Absolutely, because let's face it, in the public mind, a powerful allegation can sometimes damage trust just as much as proven wrongdoing.
Okay, so we've looked at the accusations and the evidence presented. What about the ECI itself, the Election Commission? How did they react to all this?
Well, their response has also drawn quite a bit of criticism, according to the analysis. They've been described as taking an unnecessarily defensive stance. For one, they demanded that anyone submitting evidence had to do it under oath. Legal experts mentioned in the analysis kind of questioned the basis for that demand. They also seem to shift blame, suggesting that if there were discrepancies, it was because political parties hadn't flagged them earlier during the registration checking period.
Which sounds a bit like deflection.
It could be seen that way, but beyond the immediate response, the situation seems to highlight some deeper, maybe more systemic issues with transparency. The way the ECI shares voter data, for instance. They release it as these huge, scanned image PDF file.
Image PDFs.
Yeah.
Not like a spreadsheet or searchable text.
Exactly. Imagine trying to cross-check thousands, maybe millions, of names and details from scanned pictures instead of a proper database.
That sounds incredibly difficult, almost impossible to do efficiently.
Right. The analysis says this practice hinders verification efforts by political parties and civil society organizations. It basically makes it much harder for anyone outside the ECI to actually check the rolls properly. It creates opacity.
And this ties into another point, raise the verification process itself.
Yeah, the article argues that the ECI's system for registering voters relies too much on self-declarations and doesn't have robust verification mechanisms.
So it's easy for errors or maybe even deliberate false entries to slip through.
That seems to be the concern, yes. And it's not just about the voter rolls.
Oh, what else?
The analysis paints a broader picture of concern about the ECI's operations. Things like resisting calls to keep CCTV footage from polling stations for longer periods.
Why would that be an issue?
Well, that footage could be crucial evidence if disputes arise later, right? There have also been criticisms about delays in publishing the final voter turnout figures after polling days.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
And perhaps most worryingly, the analysis describes an ECI that seems to have evolved into an institution that treats criticism not as feedback, but as an attack. This is called a troubling departure from democratic norms.
That does sound concerning for a body that needs to be seen as impartial.
Absolutely.
So with all these issues bubbling up, the specific allegations, the questions about evidence, the ECI's responses, the systemic weaknesses, what's the way forward? What does the analysis suggest needs to happen?
Well, the clear message is that reforms are needed, urgently.
Starting with the voter rolls, presumably, given the Mahadevi case.
Yes, exactly. The analysis calls for comprehensive electoral roll reform, and it highlights what it considers the gold standard, door-to-door verification, actually going out and checking.
That sounds intensive, but thorough.
It is. It's seen as the most reliable method. Now, the ECI did initiate something called a Special Intensive Revision, or SAR exercise, in Bihar. In theory, this looks like a response to criticisms about roll accuracy, an attempt to clean them up.
Okay, that sounds positive.
Potentially. But the analysis raises red flags here too. It warns that the way it was implemented rushed, with apparently problematic ID requirements, it might actually risk creating new issues related to legitimate voter deletion.
So in trying to fix one problem, they might create another.
Yeah.
Like wrongly removing genuine voters?
Precisely. And there's data cited showing that in Bihar, deletion rates were higher for women than for men. This raises concerns about potentially erroneous exclusion, especially hitting marginalized groups like, say, illiterate women who might struggle with documentation.
That's a serious unintended consequence.
It is. And the need for reform isn't just about the voter lists. The analysis points to a broader challenge across election administration.
Such as?
Things like, lax enforcement of rules around campaign spending. The Model Code of Conduct, the rule book for parties during elections, needs tighter implementation.
Okay, what else?
Then there's the whole issue around the VVPTs, those paper slips that verify your electronic vote.
Right, the paper trail.
The criticism is that the ECI only counts slips from a very small sample of machines, not a statistically significant number that could properly verify the electronic count.
So we have the paper trail system, but we're not using it to its full potential for verification.
That's the argument. Plus, concerns about technical safeguards, like how party symbols get loaded onto the VVPay units. Is that process secure enough? And a broader reluctance, it seems, for the ECI to submit the technical aspects of the electronic voting machines, the EVMs, to truly independent expert scrutiny.
Lots of areas needing attention then.
Indeed. And underlying all of this, the analysis brings up the appointment process for the election commissioners themselves.
Oh, they get chosen.
Yes, it strongly recommends going back to a process suggested by the Supreme Court, which would include the Chief Justice of India on the selection panel.
To ensure more independence and balance.
Exactly. A recommendation, the analysis says, the government has currently sidestepped.
So when you pull all this together, the allegations, the system weaknesses, the proposed reforms, what's the fundamental issue here? What does it all boil down to?
The analysis identifies it very clearly, the erosion of institutional trust. That's the core problem underlying all these controversies.
Trust in the ECI itself.
Precisely. And its credibility, as the analysis points out, isn't just about whether the machines work correctly or the technical processes are sound. It also hinges on public confidence in its impartiality and transparency. Do people believe it's fair?
That makes sense. So does the analysis suggest how the ECI can rebuild that trust beyond just fixing technical glitches?
It does, implicitly and explicitly. It actually frames the allegations, even the ones lacking definitive proof of fraud, in a different light. It says that while Rahul Gandhi's claims might fall short of proving deliberate, orchestrated fraud, his party's findings still perform a valuable democratic function.
How so?
By highlighting systemic flaws. They shine a light on areas that genuinely need fixing, regardless of whether there was intentional wrongdoing in this specific instance.
So the allegations themselves, even if not fully proven in the way they were framed, serve as a catalyst for necessary scrutiny.
Exactly. And the appropriate response, therefore, isn't defensiveness, but action.
What kind of action?
A whole suite of things we've touched on. Really comprehensive auditing of the voter rolls, much better transparency in sharing data, like usable data.
Not just image PDFs.
Right. Improving technical safeguards, getting serious about audit trails for EVM commands, securing that symbol loading process for VVPATs, much stronger enforcement of campaign finance rules and the model code, and actually engaging in meaningful consultation with the political parties.
You're listening to their concerns.
Yes. The core message, the expert insight here, is that the ECI must embrace the principle that democratic institutions grow stronger through scrutiny, not weaker.
That's a powerful point. Don't fear criticism, use it to improve.
Absolutely. Because the alternative, as the analysis starkly warns, and this is really the final thought for you, our listener, to consider, the alternative, which is the continued erosion of confidence in electoral processes, well, that poses far greater risks to democratic governance than any specific allegation of malpractice.
So letting trust crumble is more dangerous in the long run than tackling any single accusation, however serious it might seem.
That's the takeaway. Losing that bedrock of trust, that can shake the whole democratic structure. It's something that demands serious attention, not just from the ECI, but from everyone involved in India's democracy.